You're very welcome to the Woman to Woman show here on Confident Women Ireland's YouTube channel with me, Roisin Leclerc. Today I am joined by Dublin woman Lizzy Shortall, who is now based in Kilkenny. Lizzy is a former social worker who recently in 2021 published her first novel, The Lotus and The Tiger, and I have the book here. And she also produced her first children's novel called Joy's Playground. Lizzy, you're very welcome to the Woman to Woman show here on Confident Women Ireland.
Thanks a million, Roisin, and thanks for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm really delighted, Lizzy, because we spoke a couple of times on radio and I just loved your books and your children's book, but we'll talk about that in another video. But today we're going to talk about your Lotus and the Tiger and about the motivation and inspiration behind the book, and also about the issues relating to the book through addictions and anxiety. And we'll just put a disclaimer out there. Please do contact your GP, your healthcare providers, and the Samaritans if you are living with any kind of addiction or anxiety. Lizzy, as I said in my intro, you are living in Kilkenny. You were a social worker and you changed your career. Mm-hmm. And in 2021, you published your first and I think your second novel. Your first novel, as I said, is The Lotus and the Tiger. And then the end of the year, you published your children's mindfulness book. So I would love to know, first of all, like many other women, you changed your career. What inspired you to change your career?
So it was a long roundabout journey, really, Roisin. I was working in social care. Then I went back and trained as a social worker because I wanted to get involved in service delivery, especially in the mental health services. You've read the book, and a big thread in the book is dealing with grief. And I would have been bereaved by my brother's suicide, and the Lotus represents, that grief journey. So I went back into social work hoping to work in the prevention side of things. But it's there's a lot of firefighting in social work, and there's a lot of case management, and I wasn't really getting as much time with people as I wanted. So I tried a few different social work roles. And then during the lockdown, I was at home with my children, like a lot of people. And I retrained in mindfulness for well-being so that I could go directly to the prevention side of things. And I'm now teaching mindfulness for well-being in schools, in the community, with children, with adults. So it was a number of factors as well. Also being a mom of two small kids, I did want to do something as well that wasn't as intense and is a little bit more flexible than social work.
A great, brave move for a woman to actually do a career change. So Congratulations on that.
Thank you, Roisin. Thank you.
I think many women do career changes, and it's really courageous for anyone to actually take that step.
Yeah, it's nerve-wracking as well. And a lot of your identity can be tied up with, this title and this role and this salary and this, that, and the other. And I think the lockdown did give a good few of us an opportunity to take a step back and say, okay, what else is possible? Especially as the time went on and there was more time to actually do things like retrain and things like that.
Yeah, I can relate because I did the exact same the last 2 years, and it's really empowering because you're taking yourself out of your comfort zone all the time.
Yeah.
So
empowering and at times exhausting. But then it's really worth it, it's really, really worth it. And they do say if you do what you love, you won't work a day in your life. And I absolutely adore writing. So getting to finish my book as well during the lockdown, I'm not sure when I would have got to finish it because I was writing it for 6 years on and off.
Right.
Full-time work, two small children, moved from Dublin to Kilkenny. I only had one child at that point. So, to get the time to actually finish that was a dream come true, really. Yeah.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
You're writing a book. You had children. You had two children before you published it. 6 years, moving counties down from Dublin to Kilkenny, and moving house as well. And
The writing probably kept me quite sane because it was my thing for me. So when the children would go to bed, I'd go off down to my desk and the hours would just disappear. You know, my husband could knock on the door and say it's 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock. And I might have felt like I was there for half an hour because you go into your own world. It's that thing, Roisin, you know, of when you're in the flow of something that you love, it doesn't feel like work. The time just passes away, you know.
You're in that zone and you're in that present moment. And you're just there. You're in it.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
Before we delve into the book, the Lotus and the Tiger, did you always enjoy writing, Lizzy? Were you good at English at school, and were you always a writer? Or did you go to creative writing classes? So, what inspired you to actually pick up a pen and paper and start writing?
Yeah, so I suppose a bit of both. So in school, I was probably a bit of a divil and only really focused on subjects that I loved, you know, and English was one of them. So where other subjects fell down, I always did very well in English because I loved writing stories. I loved reading stories. I loved reading poetry. I've been writing poetry as well for the last 10 years. I've only started to kind of share it. But so I always really enjoyed reading and writing, but it wasn't until maybe over 10 years ago now that I did a creative writing course online. So I never showed anybody anything I wrote. You know,
really?
we always think like, oh, you know, I suppose it's a bit like an artist showing their paintings at the start. You feel a bit vulnerable, you know, and is it good enough and all of that. So I did a creative writing course online and I got lovely feedback and it was really enjoyable. So it actually started with a story. I was expecting my first child and I started writing this story about how I took her for a walk along a canal and was telling her all about the canal, and these white feathers landed. And I've actually never told anyone this story before. These white feathers were landing around us. And of course, I didn't know if I was expecting a boy or a girl. I was pregnant, but I was saying to the baby, you know, you have an Uncle Lar in heaven and he's sending us these white feathers. And I suppose I got thinking about how they would never meet. And I started writing then about him. And then in turn, I kind of went back and started writing about growing up and my relationship with him. And he was very much the protective, lovely older brother. And then as the 6 years went on, when I moved to Kilkenny, I joined a creative writing group and I started enjoying writing fiction. So I started adding in lots of things that were fiction, like a tiger got involved. You know, that's never happened in real life. And yeah, I just kept writing over time. And then it was actually my husband that said to me about shaping it into a book. So I started doing that. And then, but before the lockdown, I hadn't written in it for 2 years. It was literally a massive file on my desktop. And I started to get a bit of time in the lockdown. I said, I think I'm going to start writing again, but I think I'll just leave that other book. And Connor said to me, don't go back and finish it. And it was him that encouraged me. So once I went back to it, I didn't stop then. I was obsessed. And any spare minute that I got, I just kept working on it and finished it off and then sent it out to a load of publishers and said, look, we'll see what happens. So that's how it all came about, really, for me. Yeah.
Wow, it's lovely how, and especially when you've never told anybody that story about the baby.
I forgot about the feathers and that I was telling Chloe. And in that piece that I wrote, actually, I told the baby if it was a girl, we would call her Joy. And Chloe is actually called Chloe Joy. And that's where Joy's Playground, the children's book, came from, because she helped me write it. And I wanted to teach her those skills in the book and my other daughter, Amy. So, it's all kind of connected, yeah.
Wow, that's lovely. Oh, thank you for sharing that story.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, it just came back to me now. It's funny, actually, because we always end up talking about angels somehow. So it's funny that it came to me when I was talking to you.
It always happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So tell us, I read the book and I loved the book.
Oh, thank you.
When I was reading the book, because I'm dyslexic.
Yeah.
And I'm not great at writing, but when I was young, I used to write poems like you. I used to write poems. I used to write stories. They're probably more spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes than anything. But I love, and then that put me off reading for years, and I love a good book, though. And when I get a really good book, I am immersed into it.
Yeah.
And when you get a really good book that you're in the story, you are in the scene.
I have to not want to put a book down if it doesn't grab me in the first 50 pages. If I'm not dying to go to bed that night to read it, I usually end up not finishing it. Yeah.
But this book, I was in the book. I was an observer on every single page, and I'm probably in the book. And if I was in the movie, I was in the scenes and watching and everything. I loved it. So tell us the inspiration. Because when you gave it to me, you put a little, you signed it and everything for me. Tell me about the book. Tell me about the inspiration and the motivation of this lovely book.
So I suppose the inspiration was, my brother and my daughter and all of the writing. And over time, it probably helped me writing that book a lot, because as I was writing it, I never thought, in the first few years of writing it, not the final year, but the first few years, I never considered showing anybody, let alone it being published and out there. Like, I didn't let my husband read the book till it was completely finished.
Really?
I swear to God. I used to tell him about it. I'd be saying, oh, I'm writing about this and that now. And, oh, I'm thinking of doing this. And, I'd be telling him about it. But I didn't let him read it. And when he did read it, Roisin, I was literally like this, looking at him going, so yeah, I was shy about it at the start, but so then the motivation came when I did get a publisher willing to publish it. Actually, I ended up calling my brother's ex-girlfriend, who I've become friends with since he passed away, Sarah. And she had proofread it for me before I sent it out to the publishers. And I said to her, oh, I don't know, like, should I put it out there or not? There's a lot of fiction in it, but my grief journey is in there. And she kind of said to me, look, did it help you writing it? And I said, yeah. And she said, if you were to publish it, why would you do it? And I said, well, even if it helped one other person with any of the things, dealing with suicide or addiction or grief. And that kind of gave me my answer. I thought, if it helps other people, why not put it out there? And I've always kind of been in that role, like in my work, trying to promote emotional well-being or mental health. So I thought, what, if the book helps even one person, and so many people have told me that it's helped them, which is the most rewarding thing about it, So yeah, that's why I put it out there. Yeah.
Sorry about that. My battery charger on my laptop said it wasn't charging, but I've got it charging now.
Oh, no worries at all.
Story, so it helped. It's sort of the grief. Tell us about grief. What does grief mean to you, and how in your experience, how did you get over the grief?
How did I get over it? At the start, very badly. I was 26 and Lara was 32, and he died by suicide. And like any family where somebody dies like that, you never think that's what's going to happen. No. We didn't think that's what would happen. And when he died, I think I went into severe shock, but I didn't know till years later. And I suppose I busied myself. I was working, I went back to college, and then I was partying at the weekends. I was binge drinking at the weekends. And
was that masking the grief and the emotions?
Yes, definitely. It was so I could put on a happy face when I was out with friends. I'm fine, everything's fine. And then the next day I'd be so depressed and anxious, and the grief was so much worse. So to be honest, I did that for a few years. I was studying for 4 years, and the last year in college I wasn't binge drinking because I was doing a master's, but there was how would I say it? I didn't have the coping skills. So it wasn't until I finished college and I went off to Thailand on my own, and I'd been there twice before.
That was brave.
Yeah. I was always kind of like that, though. I'd go off on an adventure, no problem. I'd probably be less brave now. I think the older you get, So I was dying for a holiday. I hadn't had a holiday in years, and I had so I took 6 weeks and I went off to Thailand on my own. Went off up into where the hill tribes were, in up the very top between two hill tribes, and initially before that I was in Bangkok and places like that, and I was looking around and I was thinking, God, Thailand has gone downhill. Everything is sun bleached. And then I thought, or maybe because I'm 7 years older, and this went on for the first couple of weeks of my trip, and then I realized it was me. I was jaded, and I was seeing everything through like a sepia black and white lens, and I'd been trying to numb the grief, so I'd been numbing the joy as well. And I just couldn't see the beauty in things, because I was in this veil of just trying to be numb, because I'd been overwhelmed and shocked by the trauma of what had happened. And I said to myself, Lara wouldn't want this. I have to try to let him go, in the physical form. And so that's where it started. And I ended up doing a ritual in a temple with a lotus. That's where the lotus comes in the book. And that was the start of me trying to let go of Lara and accept it. And funny enough, over time, the more I did that, the more I got him back in a different way. I feel him around me, I know he's around me. So I mentioned this the other day in a different interview, and a lot of people said they identified. I realized, Roisin, you were saying, how did I get over the grief? I realized I can't shrink the grief. I had to get bigger around it. And that's what keeps me going even today if something occurs, because you have other griefs and you have other things happening. And I just remember, you know what, I can keep it in perspective. I can recognize how big that was for me, but I can also focus on all the other good things around and give that its space, give it its healing, look after myself. But for anyone who's been bereaved, and I don't think any of us get to these ages that we are without it, it's very hard to shrink grief. You can't, you have to kind of accept how big it is and then expand all the other good around it. And it took me a long time to get there, but I got there, thank God.
I love that analogy. What is it again? You cannot shrink the grief.
Can't shrink the grief. You've got to get bigger around it. We can grow bigger around it. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's really touched me, that saying that.
Yeah, it gives us permission as well, Roisin, to not minimize, because, and again, I was the worst in the world for doing it, of minimizing everything. And, it's fine, it's grand. And sometimes it's very hard and it's very tough, but that doesn't mean we can't be okay.
Yeah.
So it's just giving ourselves permission to say that's a huge loss and I'll always miss that person, so I'm going to stop because I don't want to make you cry.
And the grief. So tell us then, you were talking about that you were drinking and you use alcohol and drink, as many people do, mask grief or sorrow with alcohol. We've all done it, and there's no judgment in that either, because it's a natural human reaction to numb the grief, numb the feeling.
It's a coping tool, even if it's a negative one or an unhealthy one. And I suppose, on hindsight again, I had been doing that before Lara died for anxiety. I would have had a very high anxiety from a young age and thought that was just the way everybody felt. Thought everyone had that knot in their stomach all the time and hadn't got much confidence and things like that. And so I would have used drink to give me confidence in situations. Going out with friends and things like that. I would always have a few before I went, but not in a sociable way, in that I need this to feel okay. And I just thought that's what everybody was doing. And then when I was out, I'm only a 5'2" person. I was keeping up with all the drinkers, and by the end of the night, I would have blacked out. But people mightn't have even known, because I was a happy drunk, I was happy and I loved everybody. It wasn't until the next day when I woke up with the fear of God. Where was I? What did I do? feeling sick, all of that. And so when Lara passed away, I tried to stop doing that. And it wasn't until I tried to stop that I realized it was hard for me to stop. And that's where I realized I had a problem. And I didn't want to have a problem. I didn't want to admit I had a problem. I thought, Jesus, I've enough problems. I thought I'm doing this because of things that have gone on. But I realized again over time when I got some help, unfortunately, I'm just one of those people that can't drink. When I drink it, it sets off a craving and an obsession. And so long as I don't touch a first one, I'll be okay. But yeah, that's how it manifested for me. Yeah.
Talk to me about anxiety. What is anxiety?
So anxiety, I suppose we've all felt it at times, some more than others. Anxiety is discomfort within us emotionally. So it's where it can range from being slightly on edge to just being totally engulfed with it, and it can manifest emotionally, it can manifest physically, and it can manifest in our behavior. Yeah. And
what would you say? Would you say if anybody's watching this, would the signs of anxiety be if they thought that what they were feeling, as you said, was normal? So what would the signs and symptoms be?
I suppose when it impacts our behavior to the extent where it's preventing us from being ourselves or from doing things that we want to do, or where you're ruminating and obsessing about something. So let's say, I suppose, if I was to use the example of like low confidence, when it hit me back then, I would have been anxious until I knew that I had my couple of cans of cider bought in to have before I went on that night out. And it was manifesting in my behavior. So I would go then and get the cider and maybe a Red Bull to make sure I had the energy as well. And it's not always super obvious too. It can be, sort of repetitious behavior or things having to be a certain way for us to be comfortable. So for me, years ago, everything had to be so tidy for me to be able to relax.
Yeah, me.
And my husband put an end to that. He gave me immersion therapy. So I had to learn how to live in, things being untidy at times, especially when you have two small children.
Oh, yeah. And then when they come to teenagers, it goes even more downhill.
Even worse.
I was giving really good advice. Just close the door and pretend you can't see the bed.
Yeah. And we all have a few of those presses. But I realized, Roisin, the more work I did on myself and the more healing that I did and the more comfortable that I am within myself, I can be comfortable in a bit of untidiness. I can still relax in that situation. It was coming from the inside. So that's just a couple of ways that it would have impacted me, I suppose.
I suppose there in that where everything needs to be tidy, and I'm probably speaking from personal experience too, is now that I'm at the age, well, when the menopause came in, I didn't have the energy to tidy or dust.
Same with small kids.
It can be inches, yeah.
Something has to give.
It's that need to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect.
Yes, because we want to be perceived as good enough, possibly as well, because we're not feeling good enough. So for me, anxiety really means fear. So when I feel a bit of anxiety now, and again, this is after a lot of work and all my mindfulness training and everything, I'll ask myself, well, what am I fearing? Because for me, it always boils down to fear. Yeah. It's something internal or something external that I'm fearful about. And if I just kind to myself and deal with that, then I can use my tools to move through it.
Yeah, I had a very good analogy of fear. And I think it's Michael... oh God, you know what I'm like with names. Michael, somebody called Michael. Anyway, no, he's a beautiful guy from England. And what he said was no, it's not Michael Healy, it's Michael. Anyway, he said, and I wrote it down, look at the back of this. He said, fear, sometimes fear is about the unknown. As humans, we always fear what we don't know.
Yeah.
Michael Feely, I think it's Michael Feely. And that's what he says. Fear is the unknown. As humans, we always fear what we don't know.
And fear that we can't handle it. That's where I'm good enough. I'll be able to do this.
Yeah.
And that's why I have that strong thread in my children's book as well of self-belief, because it's all linked. Yeah.
Yeah. So anxiety, how did you overcome anxiety? When you were getting over your grief, you were going through the grief and accepting the grief. You were also masking that with the alcohol, and then you knew that you had that realization that you had anxiety. So how did you overcome anxiety?
I went and got some help. I went and got professional help. I went and spoke to somebody, and I learned to minimize engaging with things that make me anxious. So obviously alcohol, like that's a vicious cycle. It's only going to make you more anxious.
Yeah.
So, it's 9 or 10 years now since I had a drink. I stepped away from using that and let the feelings come up and deal with them. I did some CBT where I'm sure you know what it is, where you're looking at your mind. You talk about mindset all the time. Yeah. So looking at my mindset, looking at where my focus is, and building my own self-belief up again. When something like that happens and it shatters your world, I heard somebody saying before that grief knocks on your door, suicide kicks your door down, comes in and wrecks the house, and it's so true. It's so true. And it rocks. It pulls the world out from underneath you. So I had to build my kind of my self-belief and my confidence and all of those things up again. And then I'd have my little daily practices that I do now. So for me, it's not engaging with people, places, or things that cause me anxiety as much as possible. And if I do, having my protective factors of looking after myself, journaling or talking to somebody. So writing it out, what is it that I'm fearful of, or what is causing me anxiety? Sometimes it can be another person's behavior. It can be other people, and we can't control other people. And you always say that too. So either talking it out or writing it out. Exercise. Sometimes getting out of the head and into the body and into nature. For me, nature is like my higher power. It's my spirituality. I'm looking out here. I'm very lucky to have loads of trees in the garden, and in the heat wave, we sat under them in the hammocks with the kids some of the time, and it was just so nourishing, just immersing yourself in nature for me. So finding what it is that calms you. For some people, it's a long bath. For some people, it's a massage. For some people, it's music. It might be writing either, or mindfulness and meditation is good, I think, as a prevention to build those tools. So if you go into a situation where you can then, you have like a reservoir of calm in you that you can tap into. But it's very hard when you're in a heightened state of anxiety to try and meditate. There is some mindfulness tools that you can do that I'll share with you if you want, but it's very hard to meditate in that situation. I'd be better going for a walk or writing it out or talking it out. To sit down when you're anxious and try and meditate is going to be difficult, I think.
Yeah, because you're already anxious.
Yeah.
And you need to breathe into that anxiety. You need to calm the mind down.
Yes.
Calm the body down.
Yeah, exactly.
Breathe into it.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And before I move into that, one other thing which I have found really good that I have learned is helping somebody else. Yeah. And I'm sure you're good at this too, because without realizing it, we're hardwired. Dopamine, serotonin, and what's the other one? The feel-good one. The 3 feel-good hormones are actually released when you're kind, because you know yourself, if you help somebody out unexpectedly, you're in the shop and they need a bit of help. And the 3 of those are released when you're kind to somebody else.
Yeah.
So if you're kind of stuck, again, in the lockdown, probably we all had a lot of time to think about ourselves. But a lot of people did go out there and help other people too. And in turn, that helped them. And we saw a lot of that, people clubbing together in communities. And it was actually helping them. And people would say that. And same for me, helping other people helps me. So if I'm having a day where I'm feeling very anxious, but it might be coupled with a bit of feeling sorry for myself, I'll say, right, come on, do something for somebody else here. And, so yeah, they'd be my ones.
They're really good. And I like that. And especially, and it's about also when we're anxious. And it's something that I've always said that, if I'm praying or asking for help or anything, that, I always said that, or I always talk away to my grandmother and my mother and everything. But if my thoughts and I'm anxious, I'm at very low frequency.
Yes.
And it's about raising that frequency level.
Yes.
I use it. Some people do it, as you've probably seen, Liz G. Rogers does it through music and the frequency of music, but it's also the frequency of language as well as lifting the vibrations up.
Yes.
And breathing, just breathe. As you said, what was it you said about grief? Don't shrink. What was it again?
You can't shrink it. It's about getting bigger. Yeah.
And it's about for me, I'm not an expert, but for me, the anxiety is breathing into it.
Yes. And that is another. So the two tips, the way you said there about in the moment.
Yes. Being in the present moment.
Yes. So my top two tips that are so easy, and I teach them to anyone who listen. I teach them to all the children in school. I just ran summer camps there and we repeated them. Like the camp is only 2 days and we repeated them a number of times because these really, really work, Roisin. So you're just saying there about the breathing, right? If I am highly anxious, or if anybody is highly anxious, if you do this simple breathing technique for 2 minutes, it will calm your body down. So no matter what is going on in your brain, it'll still work. Because sometimes it's very hard to control the thoughts. They can spiral up or down or wherever, off into the future of something that might never happen. Whereas if you do this, it's literally breathing in for 4, out for 6. And I teach it to children by saying, smell the flower, blow the candle. If we literally do that for 2 minutes, set a timer, it's unbelievable. And I've been in situations where I've been very anxious and I've thought to myself, will it really work?
Yeah, I tried it. Yeah, it does.
It does. I was driving to Dublin and I was going to see my mum and she's very sick. Now, this wasn't yesterday, but this was a few weeks ago. And I was so anxious being back in the traffic in Dublin and going to see my mother who's very sick. And my head was kind of flying. And I said, right, come on, do this. And it worked. The hands on the steering wheel just as I was driving for 2 minutes. And it resets the body. It sends all the messages from the brain to the parasympathetic system.
And it quietens the mind.
Yeah.
It quietens that clutter and that chatter in the brain, because you're concentrating on the breath, which quietens the mind and relaxes the body.
Yes. And the other one is the 5 senses that I also teach to children. We all know what our 5 senses are. What do I see, hear, taste, smell, and feel? I do that one a lot on my walks, and it's amazing how it just brings you back into the present. Just look around, try and pick 3 things that you see, taste, smell, hear, and feel, and you're instantly back in the moment. Yeah. So then you get a chance to choose your thoughts or be aware of your thoughts and where are they going. Whereas if you're stuck in the middle of them, it can be hard to come out of it, but something like that is a very quick way to do it.
And I always say too, I've got this analogy now, but it says all about positive thinking. I always say we need but we need proactive thinking. If we're in a stress situation or anxiety, or if we're in a certain situation that is causing us stress, we need proactive thinking to get us through the feelings and the emotions and the behaviors, to get the outcome of what we're looking for, and also the calming of the body.
Exactly. And as you say, Roisin, it's not about toxic positivity, because sometimes people club mindfulness and toxic positivity together and think it's about sitting there and blocking all your thoughts and pretending things aren't happening. It's actually quite the opposite. It's about
denial.
Yeah, that's denial and that's disassociation, and that's something completely different. Whereas this is about actually being in the present, feeling your feelings so you can go through the other side.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
have to go through the feelings. You've got to get your body and your mind, have that all aligned so you can get through to the other end.
Yeah, as a friend of mine says, you have to feel it to heal it.
Yeah, I like that. You have to feel it to heal it. I like that one. And healing is, you have the healing process. It doesn't have to be, and I've been saying this for years, it doesn't have to be all drama. It doesn't have to be a negative experience. I've had since July, and I had 2 amazing healing experiences. You talked about letting go of your brother-in-law. My mother passed away nearly 20 years ago, and I had one thing to let go of.
Oh, wow.
One thing to let go of that was holding me back, my mother back, and possibly my daughter back.
Yeah.
I've never talked about this. You talk about not talking about that.
That's actually making the hairs on my arms stand up, because I hear you. I really hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. And it happened at the right time in my life. And once I let that go, something magical happened. I would say spiritually magical. Something wonderful happened in me.
Yeah.
And I did it, and I felt the breeze. When that happened, I felt the breeze on my face.
Amazing.
And my hair. And so I
it can be beautiful. It can be very beautiful. And, I read the other day, and it was interesting to me because I am a mother of 2 small kids. And it's like the mindset we inherit from our parents doesn't always match the mindset that we need for now.
Yes.
So it's about evolving and growing, and like you say, not making people right or wrong or any of that, and my own kids will teach me things all the time. And I have to remain open to that and not get stuck in my mindset that this is the way I do it, so that's going to be right for them. It's about imparting what you can and then letting them put their spin on it,
Yeah. And it's about just being in the present moment and doing what works to get you through that moment and that day, as long as it's aligned to our values and our beliefs.
Yeah, because all we have is that day. All we have is a day at a time. That's all we have.
Yeah. What was it? The past is the past. What was it? I always forget this. The past is the past. The present is the gift. No, the present. Today is the present. Tomorrow is the gift. What is it? I can't remember.
I don't know. I'm not sure, to be honest.
I always like jokes. I always remember the middle or the end of the beginning. Don't remember them all.
The present is the gift. That's the main thing.
Yeah. So talk to us now about addictions, because in the book you talk about the grief, you talk about anxiety, and you talk about addiction. What is addiction?
So I think I was saying to you earlier, Roisin, for me, all of this stuff is based on kind of personal and professional experience, because I would have worked in the mental health and the addiction services as a social worker and as a community support worker. So addiction is when we repeatedly take something and we're finding it hard to control it, whether it's a drug, whether it's drink, whether it's gambling, whatever it might be. And it's where it's having negative consequences on us and we can't stop.
Even negative thinking, you could add that into the negative thinking.
Absolutely. Sometimes we're more comfortable in the familiar, even if it's not good for us. Yeah. So, that's exactly right. Yeah.
So that is what addiction is. So how does addiction happen in your experience, personally and professionally, in within your background?
Sure. So there's a number of schools of thought on this. So it can be genetic, and some people would say like an addiction is a physical disease where somebody will take a substance and it sets off the allergy in their body, where they just keep craving that substance, whether it's the drug or the alcohol or whatever it might be. It can come in a number of ways. So let's say peer pressure. Let's say parental guidance. There might be early exposure. Like, it is proven that the earlier people engage with these substances, when their emotional development isn't fully there yet, the more likely they are to start an addiction. So there is truth behind that. So peer pressure, environmental factors, genetic factors. And I'm not sure if you're a fan of Gabor Mate. I love him. But he would say that the root of all addiction is trauma. But the interesting part is that it doesn't have to be, like you say, a big dramatic trauma. It could be something small, it could be something seemingly insignificant, but if it was traumatic for that person, that can also be a factor. He's a very interesting man altogether. He talks a lot about childhood development and addiction, but he would say, yeah, the root of it is trauma.
Yeah, and trauma. I did an interview with David Rogers, and that was all about trauma. And
Yes.
you know, trauma can, as you said, it doesn't have to. It can be something very small, but it can be very traumatic.
Yeah,
it can be,
and it can be something big as well. The other part I forgot to say was physical, sexual, emotional abuse as well. There's definite big links.
They're the big ones.
Those, for addiction and for mental illness, especially if it's not dealt with. But like that, you'll also hear a lot of people saying about something small that happened, but it was so significant to them. Or bullying can be so traumatic for people.
Yeah.
As a kid, things like that. Yeah.
And when you talked about the abuse from the physical, the sexual and the mental abuse, here in Ireland, we've had so much of that with our history.
Yeah.
And, when you think about the brave people that have come out in recent years from, the church, the Magdalene sisters, the mother and baby homes and the schools and institutions, very, very brave people coming out and exposing that.
And there's still, people are afraid of the shame that's still attached to it, because that's what often happens. The person who's abused feels the shame rather than the person who should feel the perpetrator. So there is a huge amount of support out there these days, thankfully, for people, because there is such an awareness of it. And again, I kind of do like emphasizing with things like grief or traumatic grief by suicide or abuse or trauma, people can heal from these things. It doesn't mean that people are fundamentally flawed for life. It just doesn't. And I think sometimes people feel that everyone else is playing with, is there 52 cards in a deck, that everyone else is playing with 52 cards in a deck. And if they've been through these things, they don't have the full deck of cards. They do. They do. They can have them again. They can. There's brilliant professional support out there.
And I would also add, Lizzy, that when they come through that, they're the most strongest, most empathetic, and mentally and emotionally stronger than many people that have never experienced it.
Yeah, because you do go and learn about yourself, when you've been through any of these things. If you do the healing, you do learn all about yourself and all your coping skills, and come out stronger on the other side if you get the right help. And it's about, feeling worth enough and hope enough to do that. And, there's a theme of the suicide in the book, because my brother died by suicide, and we know this is an epidemic in our time. And I suppose the message I always like to put out there is so much hope. Whatever happens, we can recover. Recovery is possible. And that's something I'm always saying on Instagram. Recovery is possible. We don't pretend that things didn't happen. We don't pretend we're okay. We look at how can we be okay, and it is possible.
And as you say, it's about that healing process. Yes, it's getting through the healing process at the person's time, at their own time.
And you don't have to fall apart, Roisin.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to fall apart, and you don't have to scrub your soul with a Brillo pad in public in doing it either.
Exactly. It can be a very gentle, private process at your own pace, and just going to licensed therapists, or even in Kilkenny, the likes of Chalk Tom. They're fantastic, and they're inexpensive. It's a donation basis. You don't have to be suicidal to go there. I was struggling with severe anxiety. I went to them. They're fabulous, so there's so many services out there that really do help people.
And also the fact, it's when you get through that healing process, as you said, you find out so much about yourself, but it's about healing. It's about self-love. It's about accepting yourself, accepting that you're a beautiful person. No matter what has happened to you, you're still that beautiful soul, that beautiful person. And that it's about love. Loving yourself is number one.
Yeah.
Accepting yourself, appreciating and valuing yourself,
Yeah.
and giving yourself that time to heal.
Yeah, for sure. And when you do that, you can be there then for other people in a healthy way.
Yeah.
You know, they say the friendlier you are to yourself, the friendlier you are to other people. And it's true, you know, when you're having a great day and you go into the shop and everyone is friendly and the world is brilliant. And you know, when you're having a terrible day and everyone's having a bugger, and you know, at the end of the day, it's you. Do you know what I mean? So like you say, what frequency are we operating on? And what are we engaging with as well? Like online, or the people in our lives, who are we surrounded by? And who are we engaging with, or what are we engaging with? Because that affects our vibration and our mood, doesn't it? You know?
It does. It's all about the frequency. It's about, finding out what lifts your frequency when your frequency is low. Another one I got here was taking notes yesterday. It was sound waves converge into many different shapes and forms. So the universe creates its sound. I thought that was lovely.
That's fascinating. I didn't know that, actually.
Humanity is out of tune. So we become really disharmonious, static. Disharmonies become static. And we are on the wrong side of the optic line. So far down the wrong end of the scale of the musical notes. The creative force can't act directly when you are that frequency, because it's signaling that it's too weak. So it's all about frequency. I know music changes my emotional state.
Yes.
It's like I'm going out for a walk. So that was, and again, that was Michael Feely as well. And it's just, it's funny how I was listening to that yesterday and we're talking about it today. It's funny, isn't it?
It's all connected. Yeah, for sure.
So with the addictions, getting back to the addictions, it's like, what would you say the early stages of addictions are? If somebody's listening to this and they, might say, well, I might have, like you said, I might have an addiction here. I might be just, what are the early stages?
When you find yourself trying to control something and possibly unsuccessfully. So a person who doesn't have a drink problem doesn't really have to overly plan, except whether they're bringing the car or not to the pub. So they might go, I'll use that alcohol as an example. They might, somebody without a problem will say, well, I'm going to go to the pub and not drink. I'm going to drive. Or, and that's it. Somebody with a problem who can't trust what they're going to do when they have one drink will say, I'm going to go and I'm only having one tonight. And they could come home in a blackout. They can't control it. So it's when you're trying to control whatever your addiction is and you're finding it hard to control, when it's negatively impacting other areas of your life. You physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, but also your relationship, your finances. So are you spending money on 7 bottles of wine a week, but you're literally scraping together the money for the dinner? You know what I mean? Or and you're drinking all the 7 bottles yourself. Do you know that way? So it's where it's negatively impacting your behavior, your choices, your feelings, and your relationships in your life. And I think the problem with addiction is, Roisin, it's the one disease that tells you don't have it.
Really?
So, yeah. So that's why alcoholics usually are the last to know or admit that they have a problem. So it's cunning, baffling, and powerful. So, it would have been said to me, oh, Lizzy, you need to end the love affair with the cider. And it was said to me by a non-drinker. So I thought, she doesn't drink. She just doesn't know how to have fun, that kind of malark. Yet I would wake up the next day and deep down I would know I had too many drinks. But I wasn't putting the connections together that I had a problem. I was not, and even when I went to get help, I thought I'll go and get help and find out what my real problem is so I can drink properly. Whereas the problem was I had an issue with drink. And if you're a young, educated person who's not drinking every day, you don't think you have a problem. Same as people with drugs recreationally, they mightn't be doing it every day. So they don't think it's a problem, because we have the stereotypical fall down person who's drinking every day, or taking drugs every day, or is the heroin addict. Whereas there's a huge problem with people taking prescribed medication for longer than they need it, or taking painkillers. And as I said, there's absolutely no judgment for me, because it can happen to anyone. It doesn't matter who you are. But it's if other people start saying it to you, and if you are noticing that you are trying to control it unsuccessfully, I think that's a sign for sure. Yeah.
Wow. And so how would we know when to ask for help if we have an addiction?
I think it's more about, so all those reasons, more nearly how to ask for help or who to ask for help, maybe. Because if you're having any of those things going on and you know you're ready, you might find it easier to talk to somebody who you're not close to, because people in addiction, of course, they're very defensive, because there's still shame and embarrassment. And it was easier for me to go off and talk to a counsellor that I didn't know and say, look, I was planning on not drinking on Saturday night, and I got absolutely so drunk. And it took for her to be very kind over a number of weeks and say, do you notice you're coming here and saying this, you've done it again, but when it's somebody like your big sister coming the next day and wagging their finger, you're not going to listen to them or talk to them, because we're
going to go, they're nagging me again.
Yeah, even if it's with the best of intentions. So going to somebody trained, the recovery rooms are amazing. There is recovery rooms all over Ireland and online all over the world for people in recovery from addiction of anything: overeating, cocaine, drugs, alcohol. All you have to do is put in whatever it is you're struggling from and write the word anonymous, and you'll find a load of meetings with a load of people in the same boat for free if you can't afford to go somewhere. And actually, research shows that even people who go through 6 weeks in a treatment centre, it's actually those recovery rooms where people identify that have the most long-lasting recovery. So you might go off and do your 6 weeks, but if you're not engaging regularly with support, people often fall back. So lots of people don't even go into treatment and just go straight to those recovery rooms and get really good recovery. So I think, again, it's a stigma that people don't talk about and don't want to talk about and are afraid. And I totally understand that. But there's a lot of help out there. There's two guys, the two Norries down in Cork, have a brilliant podcast.
Yeah, they do.
And, they're both in recovery from addictions. And I think one of them had been through the prison system himself. And they now work there. They help people. They're amazing. And people like them coming out and saying, this is the reality. We've been through it. This is how we got through it. Listening to their podcast would definitely help people as well.
Powerful, isn't it? It's powerful how this is what I say, that sometimes in my opinion, anyone who has recovered from any form of addiction or anything like that come out with the most strongest mental and emotional behaviors and thought patterns. And there's always that empathy to go and help other people.
Yeah.
I have so much respect for anyone who goes through dark places in their lives and they come out, because that's integrity. To me, that's integrity. And I just have full respect for anyone who does that, because that's life. That is people, talking their own talk.
Yeah.
And walk and walk. So that leads me on to, because my next question was going to be, if you know someone, whether it's in your family or your friends, but you've answered, and you think that they may have, or that they have an addiction, just an issue.
Yeah.
What's the best way to approach them? Because as you said, they're going to be defensive, they're going to be reactive. So
and at the end of the way, I do see it as an illness. So if somebody is not well spiritually, emotionally, if they're in addiction, and they're not well. So in my opinion, I would say, treat the person with kindness and respect. Tell them what you see and what you're thinking. Get them when they've just done it. I know it sounds terrible, but if you were to come along to me when I used to binge drink at the weekends on a Wednesday, I've recovered. I might have been recovering on Monday or Tuesday from the hangover because I would have drank that much. Wednesday, I'm feeling okay again. I'm getting set. Do I have my money for my Red Bull and my cider? Where am I going? Where's the party at on Saturday night? I'm planning again. Whereas if you got me on Sunday morning when I just feel terrible with anxious, anxiety, sick, depression, I've done it again. I didn't want to do it. That's when I'm more likely to listen. That's much more likely. So speaking to somebody when they have just, not when they're high or drunk, there's absolutely no point in doing that. But when a person has just had a binge or just done the behavior, gently, calmly, just letting them know you care for them and this is what you see and that there's support available. And planting that seed.
Planting.
And if you think the person's going to be completely defensive or you've had the conversation a lot of times and it's like a red rag to a bull, getting somebody else who's in recovery to talk to them. So let's say we're neighbours with the two Norries, but there's so many people around in recovery, or contacting those recovery meetings. And there's always a person on call and saying, this person in my life, would you help me have a conversation with them? And then outside of that, stepping back and going to maybe even Al-Anon or one of them yourself and looking after yourself. Because if you enable somebody and keep making it, you don't have to make it okay. You don't have to go nuts, but if you make it okay and enable them, they never get to the point where they feel bad enough to stop. So if somebody was coming along and giving me hugs and kisses and telling me I was a great girl every Sunday morning and sure, you're fine, come on, we'll cook you a fry and give you painkillers, I would have never reached that rock bottom of feeling so low that I knew I needed to do something. So I didn't have a partner at the time when I came into recovery. So it can be very hard for partners to not step in, especially if there's kids involved, and not let that person completely hit their rock bottom because they're afraid for them. So it sounds harsh, but that is the reality. Advice. Yeah.
Are there certain factors and likelihoods of developing a addiction in life?
Yeah, I think I kind of touched on it earlier.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Early exposure. We know as well, we do see patterns in families. It can be genetic, where there's a long line of that's just what's done around here. That's
yes.
the way of being. And then you can have somebody who's from a total teetotal family, and when they take a drink or a drug, it just sets off a craving. And that might be genetic, or it might be what we spoke about, the trauma side of things.
Yeah.
So, we can't prevent our children and our young people from experiencing the tough things in life. But we can support them if something happens, even if they're involved in it, or even if we told them 1 million times not to go out on that motorbike, something like that, an accident or something can be very traumatic. And it's not just dealing with the physical, it's dealing with the emotional then as well. You might be surprised to hear this one, Roisin, or you might know it. When I worked in oncology as a social worker, the supervisor there had said to me, a lot of carers end up turning to alcohol or painkillers, people who are looking after other people. So like an elderly relative or a long-term sick partner, or you're the only niece or nephew left and you're looking after somebody. A lot of people in those carers turn to comfort, and it can become a problem.
Yeah.
So it's about looking after our carers too,
Because who heals the healer?
Yes, exactly.
Who heals the healer?
Yeah. So there's so many different factors, and it is a huge problem in Ireland, and there is a lot of services out there. There's only one service for teenagers. It's Ashland in Kilkenny. I worked in it doing life skills.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant service.
Amazing service. And that's out in just before Ballyraggett, isn't it? Ashland Centre in Ballyraggett.
Yeah.
Amazing
Yeah.
services
They
there.
do great work out there, I have to say now. And it's also, they link them in with the long-term services and the long-term recovery meetings, and very much they get counselling and that when they're there. It's not just about going in and detoxing at all. They do that too, obviously, with the medical, but they go at it from all sides, the spiritual, emotional, you know. So
it's an amazing place.
Yeah.
Here in Kilkenny, we're blessed with what we have at our doorstep.
We really are. Yeah.
And we're two blow-ins as well.
I know. Once a blow-in, always a blow-in. In fairness now, I feel fairly well adopted by Kilkenny at this stage. My God, I've had so much support, Roisin, for my books, for my mindfulness camps. They were full to the brim, like for my mindfulness work in the schools. No, I've been very welcomed. I've even been told I'm starting to get a Kilkenny accent now. I'm not I don't know if Kilkenny people would agree. Dublin people might.
Oh no, I can still hear the dub.
Yeah, I suppose after 7 years, my kids have little Kilkenny accents. So you pick, and my husband is from Kilkenny. So you pick up, I think, a few words, don't you? You know?
Do you know, it's really funny because my son left when he was 2. And but he has the broadest accent of us all. And when his friends used to know when he was on the phone to me, because he would have a Derry accent. So no matter when he's on the phone, they would know he's talking to his mommy because he has the Derry accent.
It does happen, though. It does happen.
Yeah. So it's really funny. So what what I find, and what we're both saying, is that there's hope out there. Somebody is living with grief, anxiety, or addiction, that there is hope, help, and support, and there's a life after.
Yeah, and reach out, send somebody a text and ask them, are they okay? Or send somebody a text and say, I'm not feeling okay. If you don't want to pick up the phone, or if you can't talk to a family member, call any of the lines, like, you know, Samaritan, Pieta House, all of that stuff that you mentioned it earlier. Reach out to the person, and if you're the person, reach out. You won't regret it, because there is help, and as you say, there is hope.
There's hope, and there's life after.
There is.
The grief, anxiety, and addiction. And people probably have this new zest for life, new energy, and a new perception of life, and the empathy of, as you said, going out and helping other people.
Yeah.
There's something very powerful in helping other people.
There really is. Yeah, there really is. I think yourself, Roisin, even what you're doing, you know, you give people a voice, you know, and I can tell from you that you love it and you get so much from it as well.
Yeah.
You know?
Me too.
My favorite thing after the camps was when parents texted me and said, like, the child was in great form for the next few days or something like that. Do you know, it gives you a purpose. We need a purpose, don't we? It doesn't have to be a grand plan. No. It doesn't have to be life-changing. No. It could be to weed your garden. Jesus, I need to weed mine. But, you know, but a purpose. And then you get a sense of satisfaction and self, you know,
it gives us a reason to get up in the morning. It gives us a reason to brush our teeth, wash our hair, sometimes put on the makeup, not put on the makeup, just get out in the fresh air. It gives us a reason to actually put that spring in a step again and smile.
Yeah, for sure. Because like we said, we only have today, and life is short. It does go by pretty quick. You know,
we only live once. Well, some people might have a different thing. Some people might say they have many lives.
We just don't know about that one.
Well, I think I live many lives.
Do you think you've had a few lives?
I do. I've never said this openly before. No, there's a lot of sharing here. I would say, I've had a lot of past lives.
Yeah, I hope we get a few.
I've
just have to bring my kids with me to each one.
Or maybe I just have a great imagination. No, but I do feel I have lived before many times. And and it's there's certain things I just really don't know why I have this, I suppose my faith. And I think my faith, I wouldn't be religious. I used to be when I was younger.
Yeah.
I'm not anymore. I would say I have a lot of faith. And that's what, and I trust that faith. And we're talking about confidence and anxiety and addictions. And I think when we can get to a stage where we trust ourselves, and we trust and know that we can deal with any situation that comes our way, that we have faith to trust in ourselves and faith to trust in God or the universe or whatever it is you believe in. There's something very powerful in that. But I think when I trust in God, I trust in me.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's just me.
You trust that we're being looked after.
Yeah. And many times I've had little angel signs and little angel feathers, or somebody might have sang a song my mother used to always sing, or my grandmother used to do. And I always think our loved ones in heaven or wherever they are, they send little calling cards. I'm here.
Oh, I think so. Definitely signs for sure. I really think so. The amount of times that it's happened that I've thought, oh yeah, that's Lar, you know, and it's lovely. It's lovely,
I just got go, hi, how are you? Are you here? Oh God, you know, what was you saying? What are you
going to do if they ask you back, Roisin?
You know, and I think too, a heavenly gift. I interviewed Pauline Johnson. She's a medium psychic, and you know, and one thing that I got from her was, "We're never alone, and we are loved."
Yeah,
and I think if we
that's so comforting, isn't it?
We are never alone, and we are loved.
I remember getting that out of Lorna Burns' Angels in My Hair after Lara passed away. That feeling, that sounds similar. I must check out that book.
Yeah, it's a heavenly gift by Paula Johnson, and I think there's a video of her on the channel, and she says, "You're never alone, and you."
I'll have to watch that. That sounds fabulous. Yeah,
and it's about as I said, in trusting ourselves is, as we've discussed, building up that frequency. And look, if anybody is out there, you know, pick up the book. How can people contact you? You sell this on the website and many bookshops across the country, because I know an awful lot of people watch this from outside Ireland. So what's the best way of?
So you can get it on Amazon. You can get it on most of the usual places online. All of the bookshops in Kilkenny have signed copies, and you can request a signed copy via my website, themindfulplayground.com. So basically, if you Google it, you'll find it in loads of places online. And if you want a signed copy, shops in Kilkenny and my website.
So just give us the name of your website and your social media again.
So my website is themindfulplayground.com. And my social media, Instagram, I'm just at Liz Shortall. But if you throw in the name Lizzy Shortall, if you Google that or go to my website, you'll find all my social media via my website as well.
And what I'm going to do is I will also put your website and your social media links in the description below.
Yes, and the kids' book is available in all those places as well, and also via my website. You know, some people like to get a child's name or something written book, so or an adult for the novel. And just to mention as well, Roisin, with the novel, because I know I talked about all the tough bits, there is some light bits in there too.
Some funny, hilarious moments in the book.
There's some light bits in there too.
I love the part. One of my favorite parts was where in the book where oh God, what's the name of the girl in the book? Is it Paula?
Paula, yeah.
Where she stops and she's meeting her future husband. Where he stops, he collected her and he said, "I have an addiction." And he went, it's just that moment in the car. I'm not going to give it away.
Oh, yeah.
That moment in the car for me was...
Lucy is her name. Yeah.
Lucy. Lucy is in the car with her future husband and she just says, I have an addiction. That to me was a beautiful... It was a lovely moment. But the laughter, is amazing. And there's a happy ending. It's not all doom and gloom. And that's what we need to get out there. It's not all doom and gloom, and there's a life afterwards, and there's a lovely life. We need to end the stigma of anxiety, addictions, and grief, and just, love and healing is the way forward now in life. And be kind to people who are going through, a tough time, but be kind to ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
and love ourselves. And I want to get you back on to talk about the Joys Playground, because I love that. So we'll get you on in the next couple of weeks. I know that when the children go back to school, September, let's make a date for that and get you on and talk about the Joys Playground. You have another children's book coming out, do you?
Not yet. I've written another novel and I'm in the process of writing another novel and another children's book, but it'll be a while.
Lizzy Shortall, author and mindfulness coach. Thank you so much indeed. And, get out and buy this book, because it is a lovely book, and very brave. You'll see how she just went off to Thailand on her own. It's a lovely book.
Thank you, Roisin.
Thank you so much indeed for taking the time to come on at the Woman to Woman show here on Confident Women Island.
Thanks for having me, Roisin.
Thank you so much indeed.